and welcome to the Direct Selling Success Podcast. I'm Anna Green, and I'm here to share with you tips, tricks, and training on network marketing done right. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. Let me introduce you to my guest today. This is Leanne Gunns. Leanne is our tax expert in direct selling success. Thank you so much for being our expert. I'm live here with her today to chat about tax and accounting and to hopefully simplify and make it less scary for you. That's the plan.
Yes, that is the aim. Exactly. No, thank you for having me, Anna. I'm really pleased to be here. I love
it's going to be fab. I'm so excited. So while I am sorting the tech and finding out where we are online, would you please introduce yourself to everybody and say hello?
Yes, of course. So my name's Leanne, as Anna just said, and one of my clients dubbed me the profit hero. So that's my nickname, simply because I help businesses make more profit, but I also do tax, accounting, and all those joyful things. I try and make tax really, really easy for small business owners, particularly if you are new to this sort of thing, or you're growing, or maybe you've just never had to deal with it before because you've always had an employed job. So my aim in life is to make tax as accessible as possible to the small business owners out there, and that is who I work with. I don't work with big corporations. I work with all small businesses, so I understand exactly the challenges you face in a day-to-day world, which is particularly helpful when it comes to things like setting up your business, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's brilliant to have you here, because I know when I first started in business way back when, I didn't have a clue, not a clue. And figures used to scare me. Well, they still do in a little way, but luckily I have a lovely accountant now.
It's really helpful, isn't it? And I think I'm really keen as well, and I bang on about this a lot, to actually make it less scary and make it something that you're not avoiding doing, and making it something that you just do regularly, that becomes part of your routine almost. Because whether you like it or not, the accounting and the finance side of your business is one of the most important points in your business. If you don't get it right, you are just going to have problem after problem after problem, and you're going to really struggle to create a profitable business. So important. I think
it's not just about the tax, is it? And this is the thing that I didn't understand. It's not just about the tax, it's about maximizing your profit.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you do it and the more you make a habit of it early on, the easier it is as you grow and as you get to the big numbers and as you get to the big amounts. And suddenly, if you've dealt with it properly, nothing is a surprise, and there's no scary, nasty things coming out of the woodwork. Whereas if you've ignored it, and like my favorite thing is when we get these clients, like January, they've shoved their receipts in a box under the bed, or they've used last year's chocolate tin, you know, like the big roses tins you get, and all the receipts in there, shoved it under the bed, hope for the best, and then they've ignored it until January, like the 26th, and we've got 4 days to sort this out. I see it every single year. And actually what that means is those business owners have not had any opportunity to make any changes to what they're doing. They could have made loads of money, spent it all, not kept the money for their tax, or on the flip side, they could have made no money at all and not even realized, because they're just not done anything. So I think dealing with it is so important.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say is the main reasons why people avoid thinking about their tax, put it away in a cupboard and just ignore the fact that they've got to do something with it?
Yeah, I think people push it to the bottom of their to-do list as a main one, particularly if you are, let's say you're juggling a business and a family, or you're juggling a business alongside another job. It can feel like less important. Like right at the forefront of your mind is often making sales, getting new clients, all of those things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Often you don't see the tax and finances as important. The other thing is, and I hear this all the time, the old saying, I'm not a numbers person. Well, unfortunately, whether or not you are a numbers person, the tax is not going to go away just because you're not a numbers person and you don't like it. So you've just got to face up to it. And also, I think if you've put it off, the longer you leave it, the worse it becomes, and it almost becomes like this beast you don't want to deal with. Whereas just dealing with it in little increments and doing it super regularly, like everybody should be looking at their figures every day, and as a minimum, you should be putting your accounts together every single week. If you don't, you just don't know what you're doing, and it's playing with fire. But if you've avoided it, suddenly it's a massive thing then to sort out, rather than it can be such a simple thing, 5 minutes of your day, job done.
Yeah, because it's not complicated. As a self-employed person, it's not complicated. It is literally 2 columns.
Yeah.
What you've made, what you've spent.
Yeah.
And we overcomplicate it so much because, well, I know I used to worry about getting it wrong.
Yes.
I used to worry about the fact that I might go over the tax bracket and then I'll have to pay tax,
Yeah.
which was kind of counterintuitive because it stopped me earning money.
Yeah. That's a
And
big one as well. I think people do
yeah,
that all the time. They think, oh, I don't want to hit the tax threshold. And then as they grow, they don't want to hit the VAT threshold. Obviously, the more you think like that, you subconsciously hold yourself back because you are not going to put yourself out there. You're not going to do all the things that you know you need to be doing to make them sales because you're so worried that actually you're going to have to pay a bit of tax. But here's the thing, if you have to pay tax, it means you've made money and there's profit in your business. And what are you doing this for if you're not doing it to make profit? Like, profit gives you freedom. So whatever other reason it is that you're running your business, profit is generally pretty important, let's face it.
yeah. And that is what tax and accounting is all about. Well, tax
Yeah.
maybe not quite so much, but accounting is.
Yeah,
it's about
definitely.
looking at those figures and thinking, okay, well, I've spent all this. Did I need to spend all this? Actually, I could have made this much profit if I hadn't have spent that. Or actually, if I'd have done double the sales this month, I'd have made X. Or, you know, those sorts of things we don't think about.
I think people just sort of wing it a little bit to a certain extent, particularly in the early days. And actually, if you've got a really good set of accounts sorted out, and it doesn't, like Anna said, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It can be a really simple spreadsheet with just 2 columns in. It could be software, it can be whatever you prefer using. But if you've got something, you can make informed decisions. So let's say, for example, let's say there's a mastermind or a course or something that you really want to get involved with. I know that you run some amazing courses here in the group. If somebody was looking at investing in that and they were like, I don't know if I can afford it or not, if they had their accounts done and up to date and they could see that actually they've made £5,000 this year, then it becomes a no-brainer that they're going to invest in those things to be able to take them to making £15,000-20,000. Do you know what I mean? It becomes a no-brainer. It becomes an easy decision and you've got actual evidence to back that up. If you haven't, you're just like, I'll do it and I'll hope for the best, which is fine, but it's not the best way to run a business.
No, well, I was very much the winging it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are.
And I did that for so long, for so many years, because the money wasn't important to me. I was in this because I loved the idea of working for myself. I loved the business side of it and actually going out and selling the things and building the team. And actually all I was doing was selling the stuff and spending that money in the business on recognition prizes, on going for coffees with team members, you know, putting on meetings, all those things, and not actually looking at the amount I was making.
Yeah. And actually that means you're doing all this stuff for next to nothing because you just haven't looked at the figures. And this is so important. Yeah, you've just got to do it. Yeah.
When I did look at the figures, I something twigged.
Yeah.
It was, I was very much, I think I was earning, now I had team sales of about £750,000. So downline sales, and I was still under the tax bracket. And that's when I realized there was something wrong. Yeah. But it was just because I wasn't in control of what I was doing and looking at what I was doing.
And especially if you're spending small amounts, let's say like recognition prizes that were like 15, 20 quid or whatever. If you're spending £10 here, £15 here, £20 here, you don't notice it at all. It just goes in and goes out. You don't even think about it. Okay, a bigger purchase, you might think about a bit more, but the smaller ones, you just don't. And then they add up a lot, don't they? By the time you get to the end of the year, they add up. So if you've got nothing in place to monitor what you're spending, another thing is people say, oh, I've always been bad with money. Well, you don't have to be bad with money, do you? You can actually make a choice not to be bad with money and make a choice to take control of this stuff.
And create new habits and new ways of working, definitely. And I can highly recommend to everybody doing that.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning then. Yeah. Tax-wise, what do people have to declare and when?
So the main thing to remember is if you've taken £1,000 in sales, you need to, as a minimum, register as a sole trader with HMRC. Really, really easy. You go on HMRC, Government Gateway. I say really easy. It's really easy if you can get the Government Gateway account to work. So do it on a day when you're feeling nice and zen and you haven't got kids screaming at you or you haven't got to be out to the dentist in 10 minutes. Because sometimes proving your identity with HMRC can be a little bit fraught. So log into a Government Gateway account, set up a UTR, which is a unique tax reference. You'll get it in the post. And what that means is you need to submit self-assessment tax returns every year. So that's really important to remember. It's after you've taken £1,000 in sales. So that's your commission. It is not your profit. Like, this is really, really important. So people often think it's £1,000 in profit. That is not true. It's £1,000 in income, which would be your commissions.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that £1,000 in a year or £1,000 overall?
It's £1,000 in a year.
In a year. So if you don't make £1,000 in commission in the year, you don't need to
declare anything. That's
okay.
absolutely fine. And so then what you would do is you would put together all of your ins and all of your outs for your tax return. So we're thinking about any commission you've received, any sort of income that hasn't been taxed at source. So your tax return is going to include all of your income, and like including things like, for example, you might have a job, or you might have taxable benefits. Not all benefits are taxable, but things like carer's allowance, for example, is taxable. You might have a pension coming in. You might have rental income. You might have dividends from a company. You might have savings. I mean, there's a whole world of things you could have. There's some stuff that isn't taxable, like ISAs. If you've got an ISA and there's interest on that, that's not taxable, but a lot of other stuff is. So your tax return, when you do it, is going to pull in everything. So you're going to need your P60 from your job if you have one. You're going to need details of your income and expenses. It'll all go onto the tax return, work out your tax, and then it will all be submitted together. So
really simple, isn't it? Because all you do is fill in the boxes. So it says, do you have this sort of income? Tick. Do you have this?
Yeah.
No. Do you have? And it's really, really obvious what to fill in where.
It's really, really obvious, and they've done it so people can do it themselves. I would say the bit that's less obvious is working out what you can include to offset against that tax. So like your expenses and, you know, what you can do to reduce your tax. That's less obvious, but submitting the return is not something you should put off. Like, you should do it as soon as you possibly can, get it in, get it done. And then, because the tax years run from April to April, so now at the moment we are submitting tax returns for 2022 to 2023, so up to April, and we've actually got until January 31st to do this. But what I would say is, do not leave it that long, because if you submit now, you know exactly what you owe. So let's say you haven't put aside enough money, you've got a few months to go and make it. If you've had a bit of a nightmare time this year, or whatever the excuse and the reasons is, because everybody has them, where you haven't kept your accounts up to date and you don't really know what your profit is, you've got months to sort it out. So I would say do it earlier rather than later. Also, if you go to do your return and you realise you're missing a load of paperwork, you've got time to request it, which is really important before the deadline.
Yeah. So when do people start paying tax?
So the tax itself will depend on your personal circumstances. It's going to take into consideration all of the different areas of income. So let's say that you have no other income from any other sources, then you are going to pay tax and national insurance at £12,570 in profit for the year.
Last year, 22-23.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that is from April to April. There are complexities when I say April to April, in that when you start as a self-employed person, let's say that you start in August, your first tax return is going to be August to April. Your second one, then you would need to click change permanent accounting date and select to do from April to April should you want to. Otherwise, your date is going to stay with August. So you just need to keep these things in mind. But again, it's really not that difficult and not something that should be avoided doing. But yeah, year on year, April every year, and then it's got to be in by the end of January.
Yeah, but they do change this sometimes, don't they? The amount
definitely changes. It changes. Yeah. It's changed this year. So for example, this year they've brought the national insurance threshold up in line with the personal allowance. That wasn't the case before. The thresholds also changed. So we find out in the budget what we're going to have for the next year. So yes. It's going to change. So it's currently £12,570 for both national insurance and tax in this current tax year. Previously the national insurance was about 9,000 something, but the rates and everything do change, so it's worth having a look. And there is, on the gov.uk website, there is a page you can go on and have a look at the tax thresholds and the national insurance thresholds. But just remember, you don't get a personal allowance for each type of income. You get one personal allowance, and then there are certain allowances for other incomes. But you won't, if you've got an employed job and you're, let's say, getting paid £25,000-30,000, that personal allowance has already been used. So you are going to pay tax on any additional income you make. There's going to be no personal allowance there to use.
However, of course, this tax means that you are making money. And this was one thing I used to have all the time from people who were employed and then running a secondary business on top, was that I can't make any money, I'm going to get taxed on it. Well, yeah, you are, but you're only going to get taxed at was it 20%?
Yeah, 20% plus
You're going to
national
make
insurance.
80% of that minus your national insurance.
Yeah.
So it's quite considerable, that's 60 to 70 pounds out of every £100 that you're going to make in profit.
Yeah. And people say, oh, well, I can't because I'll just get taxed too much. I'll get taxed too much. I'll get taxed too much. But actually, the key thing is if you're paying tax, that means you're making money. So who's really winning? Like, it's obvious, isn't it? If you've paid tax, you've made profit, and that is what you want.
Yeah. And even if you're getting nearer the higher tax bracket, you're only taxed that extra bracket of percentage on the money that you make over that. It doesn't like filter down all the way to no.
The only difference in that is that after you go over 100,000, there's some reductions in personal allowance, but that's a whole nother situation.
Yeah, so you would definitely have an accountant before that point.
You would definitely have an accountant before you reach 100,000, and if you don't, you are making a big mistake in not having one. Although some might think I'm biased, but I promise I'm not on that fact.
I can say for definite that it is well worth getting an accountant when you start to get a bit more of a regular, sustainable, higher income.
Yeah, and I think it helps in a lot of ways. And I'm not just saying this because obviously it's what I do, but often you'll find that your accountant's fee can be offset in the tax savings they show you, because there'll be things they know that you don't, that you'll be able to put into place to help save tax. So last year, for example, somebody came to me that they'd been doing their own tax return. I managed to save them £4,000 in tax. They paid me 197 plus VAT. So do you know what I mean? The amount they made was massive compared to what they paid me. And that's not going to be the case for everybody, because some people will be able to do it really, really well. But actually, a lot of the time you'll find that. But I would say at the point at which you've got a regular income coming in, and at the point of which either you're really not sure what you're doing and you're not confident, it is not worth getting this stuff wrong. Just get an accountant. We are not scary. We are there's a lot of us out there for all different types of businesses. And I promise some of us are very approachable. We won't judge you for not knowing the answers. Do you know what I mean? You cannot show me anything that I have never seen before. It's not going to happen. So just, we like you to come and ask. Don't get things wrong. I would say just come and ask a question, or don't put it off and think, oh, I'll sort it out next year, because actually by the time you get into the next year, it's too late to do anything about it, because you started a new financial year. And let's say, for example, you've gone over into the higher rate threshold. There might have been something we could have done before, but now you're going to be paying that tax regardless. So I think it's really important to do it if either you're not confident in what you're doing, or you're starting to get regular income in, or it looks like you're going to be paying a lot of tax for whatever reason it might be, whether you've got a rental property, or do you know what I mean, whether you've got more complicated situation. Definitely speak to somebody and see if they can give you some advice on what the best way to go about things is.
Yeah, brilliant advice. So there is a question that's come up, and I think I can probably answer this one. Is there a list of what you can and can't expense on the HMRC website, and are there different things you can expense in network marketing that you wouldn't with a normal retail business? So Leanne very kindly did us a training session on this in the Success Lounge membership, specifically for direct sellers and network marketers, which covered lots of different things that many people didn't know about and were very surprised about, which is fascinating. So if you want access to that, give me a shout about getting in the membership. But basically they're the same, aren't they?
Yeah, so the HMRC terminology is wholly and exclusively for business purposes. There is not an exclusive list on their website. You could not create an exclusive list because every business can be so different. But there are some key things that everybody should be doing. And if you have a look on the gov.uk website, this is just, obviously we covered this in great detail in the membership, but I'm just going to go over a few simple tips of it now. There is a page on the gov.uk website, simplified expenses for self-employed. Have a look at that. Look at the working from home allowance, for example. A lot of us will be spending time working from home, whether that be dealing with customers' orders, it could be speaking to your team, it could be speaking to your suppliers. All of this stuff counts. It could even be advertising, creating Facebook posts, whatever it is you're doing. So that's done on time bandings. It's a really easy way to expense some of the working from home element. There's also mileage rates that you could be looking at if you're using a personal car to do your deliveries, if you're using a personal card for anything else, whether it's going to the post office or whatever it might be, worth looking at the mileage rates as well. But there are lots of things you can expense, but you need to just tell yourself wholly and exclusively for business purposes, and that's HMRC's rule.
It's not, I'm going to the shop and I'm going to buy myself a coffee and I'm going to put that on business expenses because it's during my working day.
No, not at all. However, if you went to go, I don't know, if you were traveling to go and meet somebody, let's say a team member the other side of the country, and you were driving 3 hours out of your way and you wanted to get lunch on the route, that would be, but yeah, not generally. Yeah,
totally different.
I'm not going to go and meet my friends down at Costa and then put through that as a business expense. That is not allowable.
Shucks, I was going to go out and get a bottle of wine to celebrate a success. I bet that's not included either, is it, Leanne?
No, unfortunately not. Yeah.
Oh,
And nor are takeaways delivered to your house. That's something I see all of the time.
really?
It's like,
Is it
yeah,
not?
it's like, well, Just Eat ones. Can I put those through? No.
Brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is being very sensible about the things you can put through.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff as well is based on interpretation of rules. So HMRC set out the rules, and then it's affirmed a little bit by case law. So we have every now and then, it's probably a bit more complicated than I need to go into, but every now and then we'll have like a court case deciding something to do with whatever it might be. So we've had things on clothing and uniform, whether it's clothing or whether it's uniform. We've had things on like tutors and agency fees. So what we do is we have to take HMRC's like legislation, we have to form a calculated opinion on it, and then we get the case law to back it up. So as long as you can stand hand on heart and say that was wholly and exclusively for business purposes, and it's not something that's specifically excluded by HMRC, that's generally the best way to think about it. Things that are excluded by HMRC, if you need to go and buy a smart jacket to wear to your party so you look smart, this is not an acceptable business expense. You cannot buy clothing unless it has a logo on it or it is health and safety equipment. You cannot travel to and from a permanent place of work. You cannot, try to think of some other things that are really obvious. You can't pay for training to create a new business. So for example, I'm an accountant. If I wanted to become a hairdresser tomorrow, I could not use that training for a hairdresser in my tax return. I could, however, if I went and did a tax course tomorrow, I could put that through because it's CPD.
Yeah.
So things like, for example, if you're doing direct selling and you do some work on marketing, let's say, that would be an allowable business expense because it's exactly for your business. It's to help the running of your business. But if you decided to, I don't know, become a neuroscientist, let's say, you couldn't put that course through. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Well, it's common sense, I think, most of the time, isn't it?
It is, yeah. A lot of it is common sense, and a lot of it is, if you're not 100% sure you're doing the right thing, then are you doing the right thing? Do you know what I mean? If you can't stay, if you had somebody from HMRC sat the other side of the table to you now, could you hand on heart say that was for business purposes? And if the answer is yes, then 9 times out of 10, as long as it's not something excluded, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your advice. Is there any top tips you would like to share before we disappear?
Yes.
Anything
So
you can help with?
my definite first top tip is don't put your accounts off. Literally, so obvious. I know I've spoken about this before, and I bang on about it so I'm blue in the face. You should be doing your accounts every week. Literally every week. You should be looking at your numbers every single day, looking at what profit you're making, look what you're not making, look at where the money's going every single week. Do not leave them longer than a week, because then you've got old data you can't use. The other thing is to do, when you've done your accounts, don't just ignore them. Look at what it's showing you. This is something that's so obvious, yet so many people don't do it. Are you making any money? Yes or no? Where is all your money gone? Like, can you do something about it? Like what you said earlier, if you're making a huge amount of money, why have you got no money left at the end of the year? It's got to be going somewhere. So where is it going? What can you change about that? And can you make informed decisions on the data you have? The other thing I say all the time, get a business bank account. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be a limited company bank account, but get a bank account that is not your personal one. Even if it's another account in your name, it doesn't, as long as you're not breaking the terms and conditions of that bank, because they will close the account if you're found to be breaking the terms and conditions. But get another bank account because it makes your life so much easier. Have your clients pay into that account, have your commission payments, all of these sorts of things can be going through that account. So can all of your expenses. And it makes it super clear for HMRC if you ever get asked to provide anything. It's super clear, it's all in one place, and it makes your own life easier when it comes to doing a tax return.
It really does. I remember having team members who were getting their customer money muddled up with their own money and all sorts in bank accounts, even though I've advised them to get a separate bank account. And business accounts used to be really scary, but they're not anymore. They
No.
are dead straightforward. Most of them are still free or incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
It's just finding one that suits you and how you like to work. Mine's on an app.
Yeah,
It
mine is as well.
X amount of percent away from my tax from
Yeah.
every single payment that comes in, which is just great because then I don't even have to think about it.
And it just does, you can automate so much, and you can get them open. You haven't got to go in and sit, like years ago, you had to go into your bank branch, sit there with a scary old man, generally with egg down his tie or something. Do you know what I mean? Listening to them droning on and trying to like put yourself forward as a serious business owner and why you needed to bank with them and why you were going to be a great asset to their bank. You don't have to do any of that now. You open an app, download it, provide ID. Generally, they want some ID to prove who you are, and that is it. Like
10 minutes.
It'll be open so quick. So just don't even avoid doing it. It's like, it's the most obvious thing, and it will honestly make your life so much easier.
It really will, because everything's there in one place and it's not getting muddled with any other money, and you can see what's going in and out.
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
can see if you're making a
Imagine like the risk of accidentally spending one of your clients' order money and then not having money to actually go, like, this is actual stuff that happens to people. The money
I've seen it happen.
A direct debit gets taken, and the money gets swiped and they don't have the money to replace it. Like, that's really serious. And these are the things you're going to avoid happening if you just have a separate bank account.
Yeah, very sensible. And where can people find you if they want more information or have anything that would like to ask?
So I am the Profit Hero on Instagram, or you can head over to my free Facebook group, which is Progress to Profit with the Profit Hero and Strategy Angel, where we do lots of free trainings in there, lots of free advice and support. So head over there if you have anything else. And also, obviously, I'm here in this group, so I'm here to help in here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for being my guest on this today. We'll put your links below so everybody's got them. And like I've said, just if you've got a question, just ask it in the comments below or send one of us a message, and we will help you as much as we can. If it gets all a bit complicated, though, I think I'll pass you to Leanne when it comes to accounts and money.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to help. So yeah, any questions, just ask them. We can come back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.